Today we're talking about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, DPDPA, but not from a legal or policy angle. We're going to look at it from where you sit, IT and security operations. By the end of this session, you'll know exactly what the law expects from security teams, why detection speed is now a compliance metric and not just a security metric, and what a practical monitoring framework looks like. Let's start with a fast baseline because this affects how we scope everything that follows. DPDPA was enacted in 2023 and it applies to all digital personal data, not just financial or health data, all of it. That's a broad scope, and it's the first thing that should register. This isn't a niche compliance requirement. It touches nearly every system that stores a name, an email, or an identifier. The penalty exposure is serious, up to 250 crore rupees per violation. That number is designed to get budget approved, and we'll come back to it. The Act covers four things that matter operationally: how you collect, store, and process data, the consent and purpose limitation rules around that data, the rights individuals have, access, correction, erasure, and mandatory breach notification to the regulator. There are four key actors in this law, and it's worth knowing your role. The data fiduciary, that's your organization, the one deciding why and how data is processed. The data processor, anyone processing data on the fiduciary's behalf, think vendors and service providers. The data principal, the individual the data belongs to, and the DPDT, the Data Protection Board of India, the enforcer. This is the core of it. The Act requires data fiduciaries to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to prevent personal data breaches. That phrase, reasonable security safeguards, is deliberately broad. And that's actually useful for us because it means the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate you did the reasonable thing, not on the regulator to define it in advance. In practice, that breaks down into six pillars. Encryption. Strong encryption as a baseline safeguard, not an afterthought. Access controls, least privilege, role based access. So nobody touches data they don't need. Audit logs, a complete record of who touched what and when. Breach detection, catching incidents before they escalate, not after. Breach notification, immediate internal escalation with a formal detailed report due within 72 hours, and data minimization. You can't lose what you don't collect, so retain only what's needed. Notice the pattern here. Encryption and access controls are preventive, but detection and notification are about speed and visibility. You can have great preventive controls and still fail this law if you can't detect and report fast enough. That's the pivot point for the rest of this talk. Here's the number that should concern everyone in this room: 194 days. That's the average global time to detect a breach, according to IBM's 2023 cost of a data breach report. Now hold that number next to DPDPA's 72-hour notification requirement. 194 days versus 72 hours isn't a gap, it's a different order of magnitude entirely. If you're relying on manual review, periodic audits, or waiting for someone to notice something odd, you are structurally incapable of meeting this law's timeline. There are four reasons this is urgent, not theoretical. First, the 72-hour rule, true compliance, requires real time, automated alerting. There is no manual process fast enough. Second, penalty exposure, up to 250 crore per violation, and a late or missed notification is treated as an independent violation. So, slow detection doesn't just delay your response, it multiplies your liability. Third, downstream liability. Processors are explicitly on the hook now, too. So, shard responsibility means shard visibility is now a legal expectation, not just good practice. And fourth, regulators expect logs. When the board investigates, they will ask for evidence of monitoring and response activity. We didn't know is not a defensible position if you had no logging in place to know. So the message here is simple: detection speed is no longer just a security KPI. Under DPDPA, it's a compliance requirement with a number attached to it. This is a practical five-layer model for closing that visibility gap. Think of it as defense in depth, purpose built for personal data compliance. Layer 1, network and perimeter, IDS and IPS, firewall logs, DDoS protection, traffic anomaly detection. This is your outer boundary, catching things trying to get in or out. Layer 2, identity and access, MFA enforcement, privileged access management, and UEBA, user and entity behavior analytics, to catch credential abuse and insider threats. Most breaches today start with compromised credentials, not exotic exploits. Layer 3, endpoint detection, EDR or XDR across every device that touches personal data. If it processes personal data, it needs to be instrumented, no exceptions for just a laptop. Layer 4, data activity. This is the DPDPA specific layer, DSPM and DAM, data security posture management and data activity monitoring. This answers the exact question the regulator will ask: who accessed what personal data, when and why? And layer 5, log aggregation or SIEM. This is the backbone. It centralizes and correlates events across all four layers above it. Without this layer, you have five separate systems generating noise. With it, you have a single source of truth and your compliance evidence trail. The point of this framework isn't buy five tools, it's that each layer answers a different question a regulator or an incident responder will ask, and SIEM is what ties the answers together into a coherent, defensible timeline. This is the timeline that should be on the wall of every SOC. Read the title again. The clock starts at detection, not at the moment the breach actually occurred. That distinction is exactly why the 194 days statistic from earlier is so dangerous. Every one of those days is time the breach existed before your 72-hour clock even started ticking. Here's how the 72 hours should break down. 0 hours detection, the SIM alert triggers. This is the starting gun. 1 hour triage, severity assessed. Is this reportable? How bad is it? 6 hours containment, the breach is isolated. Stop the bleeding. 24 hours assessment, full scope and impact map. What data, how many records, who's affected. 48 hours drafting. The notice to the board is prepared and reviewed, ready to go. 72 hours notification, the board is formally notified. Deadline, no extensions built in. Look at how tight that runway is once you back out the steps. You effectively have about 24 hours of assessment and drafting time after containment before the notice needs to be finalized. That only works if detection and triage happen in hours, not days. Key insight, and I want to leave you with this: without continuous monitoring, the average 194-day detection time means the 72-hour window has closed by months before you're even aware there is a problem. Real time SIM alerting isn't a nice to have under this law. It's the only thing that makes this timeline achievable at all. This slide is meant to be a working document. Take a photo of it, put it in your next planning meeting. It splits into two tracks: monitoring and detection and data governance. On monitoring and detection, deploy SIEM or log aggregation and make sure it covers all systems that touch personal data, not just the obvious ones. Enable UEBA for insider threats with baseline and anomaly. Alerting actually turned on and tuned, not just installed. Implement DSPM or DIM so you know where personal data lives and who's touching it continuously, not from a spreadsheet that's 6 months old. Set up a 72-hour breach response runbook that's tested and documented, not theoretical, and configure real time alerting with an actual on call rotation assigned, because an alert nobody's watching at 2 in the morning doesn't help you. On data governance, conduct a full data asset inventory so you know every store of personal data across the organization. Apply least privilege access with access reviews every 90 days, not annually. Quarterly, verify encryption with automated scans. Don't assume it's on everywhere, confirm it. Document your retention and deletion policy aligned with DPDPA's minimization principle, and run tabletop breach simulations at least annually so you practice the 72-hour clock before you're forced to run it for real. Four takeaways to close on. 1. DPDPA mandates reasonable security safeguards, and active monitoring is the evidence that you have them. You can't claim compliance, you can't demonstrate. 2. Prompt escalation and 72-hour reporting to the board is simply impossible without real time detection. If there's one investment to prioritize out of this deck, it's SIEM, and it needs to happen now, not next budget cycle. Three, data fiduciaries and processors, SHAR liability. That means every vendor, every link in your data supply chain needs monitoring coverage too. Your compliance posture is only as strong as your weakest processor. Four, this isn't theoretical. The board is live, active, and penalties reach 250 crore rupees per violation. This is a present tense risk, not a future one. So here's the concrete next step I'd recommend. Start with a security monitoring gap assessment mapped directly against DPDPA Section 8 obligations. That gives you a prioritized, defensible roadmap rather than trying to boil the ocean across all five layers at once. These are the services our company offers. If you have any questions about DPDP compliance or any of the other services listed, please feel free to contact us.